Welcome to our discussion on a controversial perspective regarding Iran's nuclear program. Prof. Ted Postol argues that Iran likely moved its enriched uranium before any potential airstrike.
That's intriguing. So, the claim is that moving uranium isn't as difficult as some would believe?
Exactly. Postal states that the uranium, specifically uranium hexafluoride gas used in enrichment, can be transported in a single standard canister on a small truck.
Yeah,
Imagine that. It's like moving a container of water.
right. But then, how does that translate to the element of secrecy? I mean, wouldn't authorities notice a truck carrying something so dangerous?
Well, that's the twist. Postal explains that once loaded in that canister, it can easily be hidden deep in tunnels. The tunnels offer cover and make it nearly impossible to detect or destroy, even if its location were known.
That definitely challenges conventional wisdom. So, authorities who say this kind of movement is impossible?
Exactly. Postal calls those claims by US officials ridiculous, arguing they exploit public ignorance on nuclear logistics. He
Right.
suggests that we rely, perhaps too much, on assumptions rather than the practical ease of moving these materials.
When you say practical ease, isn't that a bit of an overstatement? Moving nuclear material seems incredibly risky.
True, but consider that the enriched uranium is not, in a super bulky form. It's uranium hexafluoride gas. It can be contained, transported, and hidden with relative simplicity. It's a bit
Yeah.
like, how small couriers hide valuable messages.
So, if Iran can move it so stealthily, what about the transparency front that we often hear about with the IAEA?
Ah, that's another key point. Until recently, Iran had been transparent, regularly updating the IAEA. But now, they're refusing to share new updates, which suggests they might be secretly enriching uranium to weapons grade levels.
That sounds pretty alarming. It's like even a fraction of its centrifuge capacity could, as Postol warns, produce enough 90% enriched uranium weekly for a bomb.
Precisely. Postal argues that with even a fraction of their capability, Iran could be producing weaponizable material at a rate that, frankly, undermines any assumption of oversight.
Right.
This really puts the focus on the idea that military action could be, well, dangerously miscalculated.
So essentially, his assertion is that any military intervention aimed at halting Iran's nuclear program would, from the start, be doomed to fail?
Exactly. According to his assessment, the difficulty isn't just in the act of moving the uranium, it's that once you accept how easily it can be relocated and hidden, any strike would likely miss its target. It's like
Yeah,
trying to hit a rapidly moving target that's in a maze of tunnels.
that's a pretty radical departure from the common narrative, isn't it?
It certainly is. Postal challenges the narrative that it would be nearly impossible for Iran to move uranium without detection. He insists that the logistics of moving hexafluoride gas are straightforward.
I see. But don't you think there's a risk in underestimating the security measures around such materials? It feels like a dangerous, almost, oversimplification to imply it's that easy.
That's a thoughtful critique. I mean, there's no doubt that nuclear materials are heavily guarded. However, Postol is essentially highlighting a vulnerability in the system that's often overlooked. It's like
Right.
noticing a tiny crack in what everyone believes is a solid wall.
So, he's essentially saying that these cracks, these oversights, could allow Iran to ramp up their enrichment even to weapons grade levels?
Exactly. The idea is that by denying further transparency with the IAEA, Iran might be advancing its nuclear program in secret. With the possibility of producing enough 90% enriched uranium weekly, the implications become even more concerning.
If we think about it, that's not just a technical issue, it's a strategic one. It casts huge doubt on how effective, say, potential military interventions could be.
Absolutely. Postol is critical of any approach that assumes a military strike could effectively halt Iran's nuclear trajectory.
Yeah,
The argument hinges on the fact that the infrastructure and methods used for uranium movement make discrete actions nearly futile.
it's quite the paradigm shift, isn't it? Instead of a fixed target, you're dealing with something that's mobile and nearly undetectable.
Exactly. And it spotlights the importance of logistical and technical nuances in discussions about nuclear capabilities, not just political posturing.
I wonder if this perspective should lead to a rethinking of the strategies that are currently on the table regarding Iran.
It might. Postal's argument is a wake up call to reassess the feasibility of military options.
Yes,
It
indeed.
urges us to consider that if uranium can be moved and hidden so easily, then perhaps diplomatic or intelligence-based approaches might offer a more viable solution.
That makes sense. And it's interesting how he juxtaposes the technical ease of moving uranium with the political and military overconfidence displayed by some officials.
Exactly. It's this criticism of official narratives, calling them out for potentially exploiting public ignorance. It's a bit like saying the experts are in denial about the real challenges.
It's almost a double-edged sword. On one side, you have the technical capability for secret movement, and on the other, a failure to acknowledge that reality in policy making.
Exactly. And this failure could have very real and dangerous consequences. Imagine launching a military operation that's essentially targeting a hollow threat, because the calculated risks are based on flawed assumptions.
Right.
It brings to light the inherent risks of acting without fully grasping the logistical intricacies.
Given all this, would you say that Postol's assertions, while controversial, might actually be a realistic assessment?
I'd say so. His analysis forces policymakers to rethink their strategies.
Yeah,
Because if the material can be so easily moved and hidden, then the conventional approach to deterrence or intervention might be fundamentally, flawed.
it really makes you wonder about the balance between technical knowledge and political rhetoric, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it also speaks to the broader issue of how expert insights are sometimes sidelined in public debates. When officials rely too much on myth rather than measurable facts, it can lead to seriously misguided policies.
There's a lot to unpack here. It's a reminder that in national security matters, the devil is very much in the details.
Exactly. And while some might challenge the feasibility idea, the technical points, like, the ease of transporting uranium hexafluoride, hold water.
Right.
It underscores that even with heavy security protocols, some vulnerabilities remain.
With all this in mind, do you see any alternative strategies that might handle the situation more effectively, given these logistical realities?
It seems the conversation is moving towards intelligence gathering and diplomatic engagement rather than overt military interventions. When you factor in these technical details, a covert or diplomatic solution might indeed be much more pragmatic.
That's a solid point. So instead of relying on mythic perceptions of invulnerability, policymakers need to tether their strategies to the hard facts of nuclear logistics.
Precisely, and while some may still argue otherwise, Postol's analysis brings an important counter-narrative to the table, one rooted in logistics and realism.
Yes,
It's a
indeed.
compelling call for a reassessment of current strategies in the face of these understated vulnerabilities.
Thanks for walking through this detailed breakdown. It certainly gives a lot of food for thought about the nuances behind nuclear diplomacy and military strategy.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that in the complex world of international security, sometimes the simplest technical truths can upend even the most entrenched policies.